The great hall buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat in their assigned seats, each delegation keeping to their own kind. The chamber was huge, built to show the power of the Andromeda Sector Council. Crystal walls reached high above, catching light from 3 different suns that shone through the dome. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked to the center podium. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her dark eyes showed no fear. She wore the simple blue uniform of the Terran Federation, a stark contrast to the fancy robes and armor of the other delegates. The Nigma delegation sat directly across from her. War Architect Kelthara stood nearly 8 feet tall, her crystalline skin reflecting light like broken glass. The Nigma were beautiful in a cold way, like living statues made of gems and metal. Behind her sat 12 other Nigma officers, each one a veteran of countless wars across the galaxy. "The Terran Federation has received your demands," Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "You wish to claim the Sol system and its surrounding territories." War Architect Kelthara rose slowly. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "The Nigma Empire has spoken. These systems will serve our needs. Your species is young and small. You will move to other worlds, or you will serve us." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The other alien delegates had seen this before. The Nigma Empire was old and powerful. They controlled 200 star systems. Their fleets could destroy entire worlds. When they wanted something, they took it. Elena nodded once. "Then the Terran Federation formally warns the Nigma Empire. Do not take aggressive action toward human space." The silence that followed was complete. Then Kelthara began to laugh. It was a sound like crystal breaking, sharp and cutting. The other Nigma officers joined her. Soon the entire delegation was making that horrible sound. Kelthara asked when the laughter died down. "You speak of our survival? Little human, your species has been in space for less than 400 years. You control only 47 systems." She gestured to a holographic display that appeared above the chamber. It showed the galaxy with different colored zones. The Nigma Empire was a massive red area covering nearly a quarter of known space. Human territory was a tiny blue dot by comparison. "The Skarn hegemony had 500 systems when we crushed them," Kelthara continued. "The Void Dancers thought their technology would save them. We absorbed their fleets in less than a year. The Crystal Mines believed they could outnumber us." Elena stood perfectly still during this speech. Her face showed no emotion, no fear. She waited until Kelthara finished speaking. "We warned you," Elena said simply. In the observation gallery, Zix-9 recorded everything. The AI collective had sent the machine to witness this meeting. Zix-9 found humans interesting. Most species in the galaxy followed predictable patterns. Herbivores were peaceful until cornered. Carnivores were aggressive but could be reasoned with. Omnivores usually fell somewhere between. Humans were different. Zix-9 had studied their files. Earth was classified as a death world, a planet so dangerous that life there had to become incredibly tough just to survive. Most death world species never made it to space. Those that did usually became raiders or pirates. Humans had built a civilization instead. They had laws and art and science. But underneath that civilization, something else lived. Zix-9 had seen the footage from their recreational activities. Humans would fight each other for fun. They would throw themselves out of aircraft for entertainment. They climbed mountains that could kill them just to see the view from the top. The Vorthon delegate leaned over to whisper something. The Vorthons were traders who dealt with many species. "The humans are bluffing," he said quietly. But Zix-9 had read deeper into human files than most. There were things in their history that made the AI pause. Wars where smaller human armies had defeated much larger forces. Battles where humans had fought to the last person rather than surrender. Stories of humans doing impossible things when their survival was threatened. There was something else, too. A note in the psychological profiles that most aliens missed. Humans were the only known species that performed better under extreme stress. Other species broke down when pushed too hard. Humans became more focused, more dangerous. Elena turned to address the full council now. The Terran Federation wishes to make our position clear to all member species. We seek peace. We prefer trade and diplomacy. She looked directly at each delegation as she spoke. We know that many of you see us as newcomers. Some of you think we are weak because we are small. Her voice grew harder. You are wrong. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We learned to survive by working together, by adapting, by never giving up. Kelthara waved a dismissive hand. Words mean nothing, little diplomat. Your threats are empty air. In 1 month, our fleets will begin their approach to your outer colonies. You will have time to evacuate your civilians. Elena nodded again. Thank you for the warning. She gathered her papers and walked toward the exit. At the door, she turned back one last time. War Architect Kelthara, she called out. When your fleets arrive at our borders, remember this moment. Then she was gone, leaving behind a chamber full of worried aliens and one very confident Nigma delegation. Zix-9 made a final note in the record. Human ambassador shows no signs of deception or bluffing. But nobody was listening to an AI's concerns. The die was cast. In 30 days, the Nigma Empire would learn what humans were really capable of when their survival was at stake. 3 months had passed since the warning in the council chambers. War Architect Kelthara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Crimson Dominance, watching the blue and green world of New Sarajevo grow larger on the main screen. Behind her, 300 Nigma vessels moved in perfect formation through space. Target analysis complete, War Architect, reported her tactical officer. Population, 2.4 million humans. Industrial capacity, moderate mining and agriculture. Kelthara nodded with satisfaction. The numbers matched their intelligence reports perfectly. New Sarajevo was a typical outer colony, lightly defended, mostly civilian, focused on resource production rather than warfare. It would fall within hours, just like hundreds of other worlds before it. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Begin standard conquest protocol. Orbital bombardment of military targets, then ground assault. The Nigma way of war was efficient and proven. Overwhelming force from orbit would destroy any ability to resist. Then ground troops would secure key locations and round up the population. Most species surrendered quickly when faced with Nigma might. Those that did not learned to regret their choice. The first wave of plasma bolts struck New Sarajevo's orbital platforms. Explosions bloomed in space as the human defenses died under Nigma firepower. The platforms had fought back for nearly 30 minutes before being destroyed. Longer than usual, but still within acceptable parameters. Ground bombardment beginning now, the tactical officer reported. On the main screen, Kelthara watched fire rain down on the human colony. Cities glowed with explosions. The spaceport disappeared under a cloud of smoke and flame. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Then something unexpected happened. War Architect, the communications officer called out, his crystalline voice sharp with confusion. Kelthara asked, No, War Architect. Military communications. Kelthara frowned. After 3 hours of bombardment, there should be no organized resistance left. The hologram revealed something that made no sense. Instead of running or hiding, the human population was moving toward defensive positions. Civilians were reinforcing military units. Children were carrying supplies to fighting positions. Elderly humans were operating anti-aircraft weapons. This is not possible, Kelthara muttered. Where is their government? All government facilities have been destroyed, War Architect. More reports came flooding in. Human fighters were launching from hidden airfields. Ground-based missiles were targeting Nigma dropships. Civilian vehicles had been converted into mobile weapons platforms. Kelthara demanded. 18 dropships lost. 400 ground troops eliminated. This was wrong. Kelthara had conquered 47 worlds during her career. She knew how invasions worked. Once you destroyed the government and military command, resistance collapsed quickly. Civilians fled or surrendered. Nobody fought to the death for territory that could be retaken later. But these humans were different. A new report came in from the surface. War Architect, intercepted human communications indicate they have activated something called Plan Omega. Plan Omega. Kelthara had never heard of such a thing. She pulled up the tactical analysis of human psychology. According to Nigma intelligence, humans were social creatures who valued individual life highly. They should break under pressure, not become more organized. "Show me the surface battle footage," she ordered. The images that appeared made her pause. A human child, no more than 12 years old, was dragging a wounded soldier to safety while explosions went off around them. An elderly woman was loading ammunition for a heavy gun, her face calm and focused. A group of farmers was using their agricultural equipment to build defensive barriers, but it was their communications that truly disturbed her. The Nigma had cracked human encryption codes months ago. They could hear everything the defenders were saying to each other. There was no panic, no fear, no desperation. There was anger. "Unit 7, this is Command. Enemy dropships approaching your position. Copy that, Command. Civilian Shelter Alpha has been hit. This is Medical 3. We're already on our way. Enemy armor advancing on the factory district." "Roger." The words chilled Kelthara more than any battle cry she had ever heard. These humans were not fighting out of duty or patriotism. They were fighting because someone had attacked their home, and they were personally offended by that fact. Another report arrived. "War Architect, enemy resistance has increased in the last hour," Kelthara asked. The tactical officer hesitated. "At current rate of progress, 72 hours, for a world that should have fallen in 6. Kelthara studied the battle reports more carefully. The humans were using tactics she had never seen before. They moved like pack hunters, coordinating attacks from multiple directions. When one unit was destroyed, others immediately moved to fill the gap. They were adaptable in ways that confused Nigma battle computers. Most disturbing was their refusal to retreat. Nigma doctrine assumed that intelligent beings would withdraw from hopeless positions to fight another day. But these humans held every meter of ground until they were physically destroyed. "War Architect," the communications officer called out again. "New transmission from the planet's surface." A human face appeared on the screen. It was Colonel Marcus Chen, the commanding officer of the new Sarajevo garrison. His uniform was torn and bloody, and smoke rose behind him from burning buildings, but his eyes were steady and calm. "This is Colonel Chen of the Terran Defense Force. I am transmitting this message to the Nigma fleet in orbit. You have attacked a human colony. You have killed human civilians." He paused, and explosions could be heard in the background. "We know we cannot win this battle. We know you will eventually take this world, but we want you to understand something very important. This is not how humans surrender." The transmission ended. Kelthara stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Buy time for what? New Sarajevo was an isolated colony world. The nearest human system was weeks away. What could they possibly be buying time for? "War Architect," the sensor officer announced. "Long-range scanners are detecting hyperspace signatures." The tactical display updated to show something that made Kelthara's blood freeze in her veins. 3 human fleets were emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Not fleeing civilian ships, but full military battle groups. The humans had not been buying time to evacuate their people. They had been buying time for reinforcements to arrive. As she watched the human fleets advance toward her position, Kelthara finally understood what Ambassador Elena had meant in the council chambers. The humans had warned them. Now they were about to learn why. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display from the bridge of her flagship, the TFS Retribution. 3 human battle fleets had just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Sarajevo system. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces showing the same cold anger that had settled into Sarah's heart when she received the news about the attack. "Fleet status report," she commanded. "First Fleet, 47 ships ready for combat. Second Fleet, 51 ships in formation. Third Fleet, 43 ships standing by," her operations officer reported. Sarah nodded. 141 ships against 300 Nigma vessels. The odds were not good, but humans had faced worse before. More importantly, the Nigma were about to learn that humans did not fight like other species. The main screen flickered to show War Architect Kelthara on her bridge. The crystalline alien looked surprised, but not afraid. She probably expected the humans to demand a ceasefire or threaten retaliation. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," Sarah said, her voice calm and professional. "You have attacked human civilians. You have invaded human territory." Kelthara's voice chimed back through the speakers. "Admiral Chen, you are outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "War Architect Kelthara, my brother is down on that planet you are attacking. So are 2.4 million other humans who did not deserve what you did to them." She gestured to her tactical officer. "You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawing from human space." The connection ended. "Admiral," her weapons officer called out, "the Nigma fleet is not moving." "Then they have made their choice," Sarah said. "All ships, implement Protocol 7. What happened next would confuse alien military analysts for years to come. Instead of forming traditional battle lines and engaging in ship-to-ship combat, the human fleets broke apart into dozens of smaller groups. Each group moved independently, attacking different parts of the Nigma formation. The Nigma responded as they always did, with overwhelming firepower concentrated on the largest targets. But the humans had no largest targets. They had transformed their fleets into swarms of smaller ships that moved like hunting packs. "Vanguard Group, this is Phoenix Leader. We have 12 Nigma cruisers isolated on the outer edge. Copy that, Phoenix Leader. Hammer Group is moving to cut off their retreat." War Architect Kelthara watched in growing confusion as her perfectly organized fleet formation began to fall apart. The humans were not fighting like a proper military force. They were fighting like predators. She demanded. "Where is their command structure?" Her tactical officer worked frantically at his console. "War Architect, I cannot identify their primary command ship." This was impossible. Modern space warfare required central coordination. Fleets needed unified command to be effective. But these humans were fighting as if each ship captain knew exactly what every other captain was thinking. The answer, if Kelthara had known to look for it, was simple. Humans had been pack hunters for millions of years before they reached space. They could coordinate attacks instinctively, responding to situations faster than any central command could react. "Incoming transmission from Nigma High Command," the communications officer announced. Emperor Thakral appeared on the screen, his crystalline features sharp with anger. "War Architect, what is your status?" "Yes, my Emperor. The humans have responded to our conquest attempt. They are fighting with—" Kelthara hesitated. How could she explain that the humans fought without fear, that they used their own ships as weapons, ramming Nigma vessels when their guns were destroyed, that they seemed to view combat as a problem to be solved rather than a ritual to be followed? "They do not fight with honor, my Emperor." She paused, struggling for the right words. The truth was more complex than that. Humans cared deeply about casualties. They just cared about winning more. Every human ship that was lost was mourned, but it was also immediately replaced by 2 more ships that had learned from the first one's sacrifice. War Architect, the Emperor's voice was cold with warning. You have 300 ships against their 141. The transmission ended. But victory was not coming quickly. After 6 hours of battle, the Nigma fleet had lost 43 ships. The humans had lost only 18. Even worse, the human tactics were evolving. They were learning from each engagement and adapting faster than Nigma doctrine could respond to. Admiral, reported the sensor officer on the Retribution, Nigma formation is beginning to break apart. Sarah studied the tactical display. The Nigma were doing exactly what their doctrine called for, consolidating their forces when faced with an unexpected threat. It was logical, predictable, and exactly what she had hoped for. All units, implement Phase 2. The human fleets changed tactics again. Instead of attacking randomly, they began targeting specific ships, the ones with the most communication traffic, the ones giving orders to other vessels. The humans had been listening to Nigma communications for hours, learning their command structure. Within 30 minutes, the Nigma fleet had lost most of its senior officers. Ships began operating independently, unable to coordinate their attacks. The careful formation that Kelthara had been so proud of collapsed into chaos. War Architect, the tactical officer called out in panic. We have lost contact with the Obsidian Blade, the Crystal Thunder, and the Void Cutter. Kelthara stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The humans had not just attacked their fleet, they had decapitated it. Without proper command structure, her ships were just floating weapons platforms, dangerous but uncoordinated. A new transmission came from one of the human ships. It was Colonel Marcus Chen, somehow still alive on the surface of New Sarajevo. War Architect Kelthara, this is Colonel Chen. I thought you should know that human reinforcements have arrived. In the background of the transmission, explosions could still be heard. The ground battle was still raging, but now it had become a rescue operation. Human dropships were landing all over the planet, evacuating civilians and reinforcing the defenders. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when threatened, Chen continued. Now you know, we do not break. We do not surrender. The transmission ended. For the first time in her career, War Architect Kelthara considered the possibility that she might lose a battle. The humans had turned what should have been a simple conquest into a nightmare of confusion and casualties. But it was about to get much worse. War Architect, the sensor officer announced. I am detecting additional hyperspace signatures. Kelthara looked at the display and felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of failure. Fear that she had led her fleet into a trap that she did not understand. The humans had warned them. Now they were teaching them what that warning had really meant. Emperor Thakral stood in the war room of the Nigma homeworld, watching the tactical displays with growing disbelief. What had begun as a simple conquest had become something much worse. The humans were not just defending, they were attacking. Report, he commanded, his crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. War Admiral Zektar, the highest military commander in the Empire, stepped forward. My Emperor, the humans have launched simultaneous attacks on 7 of our border systems. How is this possible? We attacked them first. Zektar hesitated. The truth was difficult to explain to someone who had never lost a war. My Emperor, the humans do not fight as we expected. They do not follow proper military doctrine. On the main display, a map of the galaxy showed the situation in stark detail. Red dots marked Nigma systems under attack. Blue arrows showed human fleet movements. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The humans were not trying to hold territory. They were trying to paralyze the Empire. The Emperor demanded. Her fleet has retreated from New Sarajevo. Casualties were significant. Emperor Thakral had ruled the Nigma Empire for 60 years. He had overseen the conquest of 37 star systems. He had never faced an enemy that fought the way these humans did. 112 vessels destroyed or disabled, my Emperor. The numbers made no sense. The Nigma had superior technology, greater numbers, and centuries more experience. They should have won easily. Zektar activated a holographic display showing the battle. They did not fight like a proper military force, my Emperor. They used their ships as weapons, ramming our vessels when their guns failed. They targeted our command structure specifically, eliminating our ability to coordinate responses. The Emperor studied the display. More than that, my Emperor. They had prepared countermeasures for tactics we had never used against them before. This was exactly what the humans had done, though the Nigma would not learn that for many years. During their centuries in space, humans had observed dozens of alien conflicts through their intelligence networks. They had studied every major military power in the galaxy, learning their strengths and weaknesses. The Nigma Empire was powerful because they followed proven tactical doctrines that had worked for thousands of years. But those same doctrines made them predictable to an enemy that had studied them carefully. The hologram changed to display Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She sat calmly at a simple desk, her hands folded in front of her. Behind her, the blue and white flag of the Terran Federation hung motionless. The Emperor leaned forward. Finally, a proper declaration of war. Now they could fight according to established rules, but Elena was not finished. However, I want to make clear that this is not a war of conquest. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was harder. To accomplish this goal, we will target every Nigma military installation, supply depot, communication station, and government facility until you agree to our terms. The Emperor felt a chill run through his crystalline body. This was not how civilized warfare was conducted. Wars were fought to gain territory or resources or political advantage. They were not fought for the simple purpose of destroying an enemy's ability to make war. Furthermore, Elena continued, any Nigma vessel found in human space after this declaration will be destroyed without warning. Any Nigma facility supporting military operations against human targets will be eliminated. She looked directly into the camera, as if she could see the Emperor through the transmission. You attacked our people, Emperor Thakral. You killed human children in their homes. You made this personal. The transmission ended. War Admiral Zektar spoke into the silence that followed. My Emperor, this is not a normal war declaration. The humans are threatening total warfare. Attacks on civilian infrastructure, economic targets, government facilities. Emperor Thakral stared at the blank screen. He had expected the humans to surrender when faced with Nigma might. When that failed, he had expected them to fight honorably for their territory. He had never imagined they would respond with threats to dismantle his entire empire. Send word to all fleet commanders, he ordered. Full mobilization. Every available ship is to be armed and prepared for combat. But even as he gave the order, doubts crept into his mind. The humans had prepared for this conflict in ways the Nigma did not understand. They had weapons and tactics that his commanders could not predict. Most disturbing of all, they seemed willing to sacrifice anything to achieve victory. A new report arrived from the border systems. My Emperor, human forces have destroyed the fuel depot at Crystal Station. More reports followed quickly. The humans were not fighting a traditional war. They were conducting a campaign of systematic destruction against everything that kept the Nigma Empire functioning. It was efficient, ruthless, and completely outside the accepted rules of galactic warfare. My Emperor, Zektar said quietly, Perhaps we should consider opening negotiations with the humans. Emperor Thakral turned to face his war admiral. In his 60 years of rule, no one had ever suggested that the Nigma Empire should negotiate from a position of weakness. Zektar hesitated, then spoke the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. My Emperor, I believe we are fighting an enemy that wants victory more than we do. They are willing to do things that we are not. They are willing to sacrifice things that we would never sacrifice. For the first time since the conflict began, Emperor Thakral wondered if his empire had made a terrible mistake. The humans had warned them. They had tried to avoid this war. And now that it had started, they were fighting it in ways that the Nigma Empire was not prepared to match. Outside his palace, the first human raid strikes began falling on the Nigma homeworld's orbital defense platforms. The war had come home, and it was nothing like what the Emperor had expected. The humans had kept their promise. They had warned the Nigma Empire what would happen. Now they were showing them what that warning had really meant. 6 months after the first attack on New Sarajevo, war architect Kelthara sat in the ruins of her command bunker on the planet Vex 7. Around her, the remains of the once mighty Nigma Third Fleet waited for death or salvation. The humans had not lied when they promised total war. They had systematically destroyed every major Nigma military installation, supply depot, and communication relay within 100 light-years. The great empire that had conquered worlds for 3,000 years was falling apart, one broken link at a time. Kelthara looked up from the tactical displays that showed nothing but defeat. Her crystalline skin was cracked and dull from months of stress. Around her, officers who had once commanded star systems now struggled to maintain control of a single planet. "Display it," she ordered. The hologram that appeared showed Admiral Sarah Chen on the bridge of her flagship. Behind her, the blue and white insignia of the Terran Defense Force gleamed against clean metal walls. The contrast with Kelthara's destroyed command center could not have been more stark. "War Architect Kelthara," Admiral Chen said, her voice professional but not unkind. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force." Surrender. The word hung in the air like poison. No Nigma force had ever surrendered in their recorded history, but then, no Nigma force had ever faced an enemy like the humans. Kelthara asked, though she already knew she had no choice but to accept whatever was offered. "All Nigma military personnel will be transported to neutral territory and released unharmed. Your ships and weapons will be confiscated, but your crews will be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war." Kelthara had expected execution or enslavement. Instead, the humans were offering mercy to an enemy that had attacked their civilians. It made no sense according to Nigma understanding of warfare. She asked, "Your empire will agree to a formal peace treaty. All Nigma forces will withdraw from human space immediately. Your government will pay reparations for the damage caused to New Sarajevo and other attacked colonies." The final condition was the most bitter. It would humiliate the Empire in front of every species in the galaxy. But Kelthara looked around at her shattered forces and knew she had no other choice. "I accept your terms," she said quietly. 3 days later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood once again before the Andromeda Sector Council. But this time, the chamber was very different. Where once alien delegates had whispered and joked during human speeches, now perfect silence reigned. Every representative watched her with the careful attention reserved for apex predators. "The Terran Federation is pleased to announce the end of hostilities with the Nigma Empire," Elena announced. Her voice carried the same calm professionalism it always had, but now everyone understood what lay beneath that surface. Emperor Thakral's image appeared on the main display. The once proud ruler looked aged and defeated. His crystalline features seemed to have lost their inner light. "The Nigma Empire formally surrenders to the Terran Federation," he said, each word painful to speak. We acknowledge that this conflict was initiated by our unprovoked attack on human civilians. The silence that followed was complete. Every alien delegate understood what they had just witnessed. The second largest empire in the galaxy had been brought to its knees by a species most of them had never heard of a year ago. But Elena was not finished. The Terran Federation wishes to make our position clear to all member species, she continued, using almost the same words she had spoken 6 months earlier. We remain committed to peace. We prefer trade and diplomacy to warfare. She looked directly at each delegation as she spoke, just as she had before. But now her words carried weight they had not possessed before. To those species who choose friendship with humanity, we offer our hand in partnership. To those who choose neutrality, we respect your decision. She paused, letting the implications sink in. In the observation gallery, Zix-9 updated the AI collective's files on human capabilities. The machine had watched the entire conflict with fascination. The humans had done exactly what they promised they would do. They had fought with precision, determination, and complete ruthlessness until their enemy surrendered. But most interesting to Zix-9 was what the humans did after victory. They did not occupy Nigma territory. They did not demand tribute or slaves. They simply wanted to be left alone to build their civilization in peace. This was not the behavior of a typical Death World species. Most aggressive species conquered for resources or territory, or the simple pleasure of domination. Humans conquered only when forced to, and only until the threat was eliminated. A new entry appeared in the Galactic Species database. Species, Homo sapiens. Classification, apex predator. Threat level, extreme when provoked. Recommendation, maintain peaceful relations. Note: this species does not initiate conflicts but will end them decisively. 3 months later, war architect Kelthera sat in a small apartment on the neutral world of Haven Station. She had been stripped of rank and exiled from Nigma space, but the humans had been true to their word about treating prisoners well. She had food, shelter, and access to galactic communication networks. A human journalist had requested an interview. Kelthara had agreed, partly out of curiosity and partly because she wanted to understand the species that had defeated her so completely. Kelthara considered her answer carefully. How could she explain to someone who had not experienced it? How could she describe the way humans fought? Not with emotion or hatred, but with the cold precision of natural predators who had found prey. We thought we understood war, she said finally. We had conquered hundreds of worlds. We had defeated species far older and more advanced than ourselves. She paused, remembering the tactical displays showing her fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate every move. But the humans taught us that we had only been fighting children. Every species we had conquered before fought for honor or territory or resources. Humans fight for survival. She shrugged. The journalist leaned forward. Kelthara laughed, but there was no humor in it. Young human, your people tried to warn us. Your ambassador told us exactly what would happen if we attacked you. She looked directly into the camera. I would tell them what I wish someone had told me, Kelthara replied. Humans are not like other species. They do not fight wars. They solve problems. The interview was broadcast across the galaxy and became one of the most watched programs in galactic history. It served as a warning that every species could understand. Humans were dangerous not because they were aggressive, but because they were incredibly good at warfare when forced to fight. Back on Earth, in a small office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Elena Vasquez finished reading the latest diplomatic reports. 17 species had requested trade agreements with humanity in the past month. 12 others had asked for defensive alliances. 3 former Nigma client states had declared independence and requested human protection. The galaxy had learned what humans were capable of when threatened. More importantly, they had learned that humans could be trusted to keep their word, both their promises of friendship and their warnings of consequences. Elena closed the reports and looked out at the ocean where her species had first learned to navigate dangerous waters. Humans had come a long way from those early ocean voyagers, but some things never changed. They still preferred to explore and build rather than conquer and destroy. But when someone threatened their home, they remembered that they were the descendants of persistence hunters who had once chased prey across entire continents until it collapsed from exhaustion. The galaxy was learning to respect that heritage, and that, Elena thought, was exactly as it should be. The war was over. The peace would last as long as others remembered the lesson the Nigma Empire had learned too late. Humans always kept their promises, especially their warnings.